Hello, 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 hello. This is Willie Cartwright with From Saved to Sane. Glad to have all of you here today with us, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of From Saved to Sane. Um, I want to say again hello to everyone out there. Glad to have you, whether you're joining us live here, and if you are, please send me a message in the chat. Let me know that you're here. Ask a question, make a comment. It can be pro, con, it doesn't matter. You don't have to necessarily agree with everything I say or what we say here on the program. I just certainly appreciate having you in attendance and making comments. And so, yeah, for those of you who are listening and are not making comments, I certainly appreciate that too. Those of you who may listen at a later time, I certainly appreciate that as well. Let me begin by apologizing a little bit. I usually try to keep this podcast at the same time every other week, which is 7 o'clock Eastern time and 4 o'clock here on the West Coast. I'm in the Vegas area, so I'm in Pacific Coast time or Pacific Standard Time, I should say PST. But today I had to push it back a little bit, so it is just after 7:30 on the East Coast and just after 4:30 here. Sharon, what's going on? Glad to have you, Sharon. I always tell her that you asked about her and say hello, so I will tell my wife. Thank you so much for joining us, Sharon. Glad to have you. Yeah. So thankful that all of you have joined us. Let me begin the way I always begin by saying thank you to a couple of people. First is Taisha Exick. Thank you for everything you've done for the program, and thank you, and I hope that you are and the family are doing well. Secondly, as Sharon mentioned, my wonderful wife, Salima. Thank you, Salima, for all the work that you do behind the scenes, and more importantly, your 100% support, regardless of what the topic is, regardless of what I do. You are 100% in support of everything I do in this space on this podcast. And so I certainly appreciate you for that. And then thirdly, thank you to all of my loyal listeners and subscribers out there. Again, as I've always said, all of my subscribers are organic. We are still growing. We're growing every day. We are adding subscribers. It is not where I would like it to be, but I am certainly thankful and appreciative that it is where I am. And more importantly, that all of these subscribers are real people. And so thank you for that. Neo, what's going on, Neo? What is happening? Glad to have you with us today, Neo, as well. So yeah, so we are good. We're not going anywhere. We will be here for the foreseeable future. And so thank you for joining us. Today's topic, why God, Jesus, and Christianity are dangerous to the African American community. I've touched on this a couple of times before. We've been doing this for going on now, I think, 4 years. And so we sometimes talked about the topics that we've spoken about before, but we may put a different twist on it. I thought that this topic was important for a number of reasons. Obviously, for the obvious, that my position is that not only Christianity, but all of religion is a danger, not only for African Americans, but for society at large. But for this particular show, we're going to sort of highlight African Americans, but the things that we talk about are not necessarily unique to just African Americans, but they apply across the board to all of those people out there who practice religions. And so this is just not about Christianity, but all religions, because I am an equal opportunity, quote unquote, hater of religions. So just not Christianity, but all of them, Islam, Judaism, all of them. I'm sort of neutral on Buddhism, if you consider that to be a religion. I necessarily don't. But I've had experience and been enlightened about Buddhism for several years now. And so there are others. There are some religions that I probably hold more disdain for than others. Certainly Christianity would be one of those, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Surin Lata, 1109, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, so I'm going to say It's 11:09. Peace to you as well. Thank you for joining us so much. Thank you. Thank you. Facts. You said facts. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, and so we're going to talk about that, but it's going to be a sort of a different twist. Um, yes, I am great. I am wonderful. Or you mean, so that's the thing about the way we speak. You good can mean, are you good? You good can mean you good in the sense of you didn't make a mistake, everything is good. So yeah, so however you meant it, I am good. And I certainly appreciate that in the pronouncing of your name. I don't want to butcher it. So yeah, thank you for saying I'm good with that as well. So yeah, uh, one of those things in the culture. But yeah, but let me talk about how we got to this, or why I thought this. Another reason why I thought this topic was important. I have a friend. A friend has been a friend of mine for about 30 years now. He's a fraternity brother of mine, and I won't call his name to protect him, but he fashions himself as, or at least he used to fashion himself as an online pastor. And I've talked about this gentleman before. He had gone through some really terrible things dealing with his health. He was stricken a few years ago with a stroke, a couple of strokes. He had lost the use of part of his body. They thought he was going to die. He had a business. He was an entrepreneur. He lost all of that. Through all of this, family struggles, kids, wife, all of that. Um, but recently, a couple of years ago, he had come out of that, and financially, he had sort of recovered with the help of a lot of people, including the fraternity, but a lot of other people outside of the fraternity that knew him chipped in. This is a really, really great guy, and so he had recovered. But unbeknownst to all of us, there was still some suffering going on. There was still some struggles, some financial struggles, some physical struggles, and I believe some mental struggles. Um, this gentleman had basically centered his entire life around his faith, and not just going to church on Sunday, but this was his identity. This is who he was. This is what he talked about all of the time. To the point, as I found out later, it was a hindrance to his vocation and his financial life and his career. To the extent that that bled into his relationship, his marriage of almost 30 years, I think. Um, but anyway, but recently we became aware, we being myself and other friends of his and other attorney brothers became aware of the struggles that he and his family was going through again for a second or third time. Actually, from what we found out from the wife, this was 5+ times. But we had just become aware of all of these things, and that they were really, really financially struggling, about to be homeless, and had been homeless again for a second or third time. Just a whole bunch of issues. Um, Again, friends, fraternity brothers, friends that he knew all got together, tried to lend him support, that financial support, including finding him a place to live. Although he spent time on the streets, finding him a place to live, as well as finding him a place to maybe help him to get a job, uh, hash out his skills. This gentleman is extremely talented when it comes to putting together videos and stuff on the internet. He's technology from a technological standpoint. This guy is brilliant, very smart guy. Has done some great things in the Atlanta area, working with some very renowned people, very well known, very famous people there in Atlanta. So a lot of those people reached out again to lend him and his family a hand in supporting him. For whatever reason, I sort of became the point person on this. Begrudgingly, I am not, and I would be, in full disclosure, I am not the most sensitive guy. I am not that dude. I am not Mr. Sensitivity. My wife is. We are extreme opposites. I can be cold and callous. I can be very detached. My wife is very loving, very nurturing, very caring. So I am not that dude. But for whatever the reason, this gentleman, he and I are cool. I wouldn't say that we're the closest of friends. I'm sure he has friends who are closer, but we are fairly close. But I sort of became the point person, the person that people reached out to ask what was going on with this guy, how could they help, so forth and so on. I did everything I could. I gave of myself. I gave finances. I was always there to be an ear to listen. I talked about the situation in a way that garnered some help that he needed. But what I found out as going through this process of trying to assist the brother, what I found out was that this brother was really dealing with something in his faith and his religion. We would go back and forth talking about it. He would talk about how God has let him down. And then the next day he would talk about how God is the greatest thing in the world. Next day, God has let him down, forsaken him, that he did something wrong. Next day, God is real, regardless of what he thinks, whatever. And so it came to the point where it was all about, in my opinion, it began to be about him wanting to be a martyr for Christianity. So he started posting videos of himself being homeless. Although there were some other issues going on, there was some help that had been rendered and offered that he had not taken advantage of, or partly had taken advantage of. There were some ways that I believe that his situation could have been made better, but it seemed to me that the person was more intent on becoming more of a martyr. We've talked about this thing. What I'm saying to you, I've said to him. I said to him on countless occasions that there's no God to save you. You need to save yourself. Um, but what it came down to was that this person was so fixated with his faith, with God, what God has done and has not done in his life, and being a martyr and representing Christianity and God, until I know for a fact that he bypassed some opportunities, missed some opportunities where he could have gotten himself in a better situation, not only himself, but his family. Long story short, I think now the brother's still struggling. Family is apart, and so forth and so on, without going into many details. And so that got me to thinking about how religion, Jesus Christ, God, the belief system can be very detrimental and dangerous to us as a society and to individuals. And I highlight specifically African Americans because we are unique in our willingness to struggle, our desire to struggle, our expectations to struggle, if it means that we somehow believe that we are going to be closer to God. We somehow believe that our struggles, whether they be financial struggles, whether they be physical struggles, health-wise, whether they be relationship struggles, somehow draws us closer to God. The last time I spoke about this topic, I referenced a book and a gentleman by the name of Dr. Cone. Dr. Cone was a professor, a brilliant historian, writer, educator in this space. He wrote a couple of books. We wrote several books, but a couple of books specifically about the relationship, dealing with the struggle of African Americans and their relationship to Jesus Christ and his struggles on the cross and his, struggles as a human, supposedly. And there's a correlation, there's a connection, and there's a correlation, and there is a causation there between what we as African Americans feel like our struggle should be and what it symbolizes. And so for many African Americans, they believe that the more they struggle, the closer they are to God. The more they struggle, the more pious they are, the more righteous they are. And this, right off the top, is extremely dangerous. Not only is it dangerous to the individual, but looking at the example that I've just given about my friend, it is also dangerous to his family and people around him. And so I mentioned this to many other people who had called me asking what could they do, what was going on, how could they assist. And I said, at this point or at a certain point, it is going to be about this gentleman figuring it out. It is going to be about him deciding as to whether or not being a martyr for God is more important than him getting his life together and then taking the necessary steps if that is the direction that he so chooses. I am reluctant to say that I believe what it looks like to me that this brother chose to continue to be a martyr for God, for whatever that reason may be, but that is part of it. I've said this to him and I've said this to others. He believes that this is somehow an divinely orchestrated either test or punishment, a journey that he must go on as orchestrated and defined by his God. Because, and this is in conversation with us, the reason being is because, and this is basically in his words, and I am paraphrasing, but he believes that the way that he believed and the way that he grew up in the churches believing how God is and who God was incorrect. And because of that, he must suffer this punishment of this divinely orchestrated journey that he is on. If this was anything else outside of religion, if this process, the way he thought, his ideology was anything else outside of religion, then this person would probably be deemed as someone needing mental help. I certainly believe that he needs mental help, and I've said this to him, and I've said this to others who, quite frankly, agree with me after speaking with him and knowing more about the situation. Uh, but what I want to say is that this individual is not unique. This is not unique to this person. I have seen this. Many of you who have been around, who've been part of the church, who've been part of Christianity, who's been part of religion, especially the more fundamentalist branches of Christianity, the more dogmatic branches of Christianity. We've seen this from other people where their entire life is centered around this religion and the faith and the belief in God and Jesus, to the point where it becomes a detriment, and even to the point where it is dangerous. And if I broaden this and make it an even bigger picture, a macro picture, we see this with other people outside of our community. We have seen stuff as maybe people in the Deep South who believe in their God and their faith and their interpretation of scriptures to the point where they test this with poisonous snakes and serpents. And several of those individuals who've done this have died. That is part of the danger of this, of religion. We've seen it to where other segments of sects of Christianity have denied treatment. Parents have denied treatment to their kids, and they've based it on their religious belief. And unfortunately, in some of these cases, the child has died from the lack of medical treatment. Those are some of the more extreme, but some of the less extreme, relatively speaking, is again how many of us were raised in the church, especially African Americans. Our parents believe in the interpretation of spare the rod, spoil the child, and so what I believe to be beyond the necessary disciplining of us, especially my generation coming up. It went beyond that. I say this all the time. My mother went beyond the necessary discipline into what I would consider abuse, certainly physical abuse, in an attempt to discipline us as to what her interpretation of church scripture was. And this was the defense. This made it all right, even though it was, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most professionals in this space, certainly today, what my mother did to us in the sense of disciplining us would be considered abuse. Absolutely. And so I've talked about that. I won't go into that. But I mentioned that to my mother when I became an adult, that I thought that she went way overboard. And I'm certainly wasn't the only one growing up in my space, in my city, in my community in the Deep South, the state of Alabama. I know everybody that I knew got disciplined pretty much the same way. A couple of comments here. You said 1109 said I'm from South Carolina. Okay, right. So we understand each other. I am from Alabama, but I spent 30 years in Georgia. I now live here in the Vegas area. It is like night and day. It is completely different. Maurice Wheatley, what's going on? Maurice Wheatley 7. Haven't heard from you in a minute. I'm glad to have you here. Oh my goodness. Jaden Ivy has pretty much crashed his career, but I think there may be some mental illness going on. Let's talk about that for just a second. let me bring the rest of us up to speed on from what I know about this Jaden Ivy situation. And Maurice, you can help me if I miss anything. For those of you who don't know, Jaden Ivy, I'm sorry, Jaden Ivy is a professional basketball player who I believe played for the Chicago Bulls. Um, if you know anything about basketball, the NBA does about a month or so of celebrating the LGBTQ community. And there have been other people who've spoken out against that. Not a lot, but some have. Um, Jaden spoke out harshly against what the NBA does and has done in partnering with the LGBTQ community and shining a light on the abuses and the atrocities, the way that they are treated in that community, which I think is a admirable thing. But he spoke out. In speaking out, right after he spoke out, the team cut him. So he is no longer on a team that I know of. And now he is literally in the streets. I don't know if he's in Georgia or Alabama, whatever state or whatever city he's in, but he is literally in the streets now as one of these street corner preachers, preaching about the evils of homosexuality, so forth and so on, all of this stuff. And there's been a couple of other basketball players who've come to his support and some other athletes. Here's why he is 100% absolutely wrong in this case. First of all, what he's saying and what he is advocating, even if he's using the Bible as sort of his defense, is harmful. It is degrading to those in the LGBTQ community. To say that somebody is an abomination and that somebody is wrong and that somebody is however you phrase it, simply because they choose to love someone of the same sex, it is an absolute atrocity to me. That's first. Ivy was released not because his free religion of freedom was taken away from him, but because what he said and his actions were detrimental not only to his team but to the league, to the system, to the corporation, the EBA that employs him. Think about those of you who work for someone else. If your company had a policy where they supported X, and they supported X in a yearly, a very open way, and you as employee spoke out publicly against X, it would be well in the right of your company to fire you, to get rid of you, and that is what happened there. And I think thirdly, what people like Jaden Ivy miss is that regardless of what they say and do in the space of their religion and faith, it is still their opinion. It is still their faith. It is still their religion. As I've said before, and as I will always say, religion is inherently discriminatory. It is inherently discriminative, right? Because it singles out individuals who are who are not part of their faith, and say that these people are wrong, evil, whatever. If they are doing something that is in contradiction to what these sacred scriptures say, then these people are deemed to be, in the case of the Christianity, they are deemed to be an abomination. And so how can one pass judgment on somebody else? I tell people all the time, I don't believe in sin. Sin is something that was created by Christianity or people in religion, Christianity or the Abrahamic religions. That's not a thing to me. You do something, there are pros and cons, there are consequences to it, and there are reactions to it. And so it makes me sick when people do this and then blame it on religion. You are a bigot. You are hateful, and that's really what it is. Maurice said, sidebar, I'm also, Ace Mac, okay, got you. Okay, Ace Mac said, okay, and more wheat. Okay, got you. My display name changed out of nowhere at one point, so I changed it to the real name. Got you. Appreciate it. Certainly appreciate that. But yeah, and so, but let's look at this though. So what this has caused this gentleman, if you know anything about basketball contracts and what basketball players make, even guys who get very little playing time make really great money, and the contracts are long and they are guaranteed in the NBA. Completely guaranteed in the NBA. I think to a certain point, I might be a little bit off of that. But the careers are certainly longer. The money that's made is certainly more. And so here is someone who has jeopardized millions and millions and millions of dollars, generational wealth, because he wanted to speak out against the LGBTQ community. Now, from a basketball standpoint, my understanding is that Jaden Ivy, who had been in the league for not a very long time, sustained an injury, I think last year before last. And when he got traded to the Bulls, he was not the same player per se. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that if he had a fully recovered, in a year or two or whatever, still been on the team, still practiced, still part of the team, he still would have been making millions. And so here is someone who has not only endangered himself, but whatever family he has or may have in the future, the generational wealth, opportunity to create generational wealth is gone simply because you want to be vocal about your bigotry toward people in that community, because that's really all that it is. And to Maurice Wheatley's point, if you look at Jaden Ivy and you watch him, you come away with believing that there is there is some mental illness going on. And so when we combine the two, when people have legitimate mental illness going on, and you combine that with religion that they use to justify some of their actions and some of their words and some of their beliefs, it is a very dangerous cocktail. And so when I talk about my friend earlier, I said early on that I believe that this person, that he needed to seek some mental illness, some help for a mental illness. But of course, he denied and refused and said there's nothing wrong with him mentally. And so, but I believe, and I'm coming from a position of a person who was a Christian for the better part of about 40 years. And now that I am on the outside looking in, to me, there is certainly a mental illness aspect to a lot of the things that I saw and that I witnessed, and then when I was part of the faith, that I sort of brushed off as this is just God, this is just part of the faith, or whatever. Looking on the outside, being on the outside, it is easy and it is clear to see that there with a lot of these people there is some mental illness going on. It is one thing to be devout. It is one thing to be even in a silo. Well, this is your everything, right? But then there are people who go even beyond that to the extreme, where everything is about their faith and their religion, and they become a danger to themselves and a danger to other people. And we have seen that in many, many, many times. And so, yeah. And so when we talk, I had mentioned Dr. Cone in his book and understanding why there's a relationship between African Americans and their desire and their willingness and their acceptance of struggling, because we feel like it makes us more devout and brings us closer to God or Jesus. But it is dangerous. In my book, this wonderful book here, the book that I wrote, was that From Saved to Sane, my journey away from Christianity, and why this is important, and why Christianity has been detrimental to the African American community. This is available on Amazon. I outlined several reasons why it is detrimental and it is dangerous to our community. One of the things that I talk about early on in the book is that it robs the community of its resources. And we'll get to the financial resources in just a second. But I knew a lot of talented people who could sing, play instruments, and do very well. And the church would ask them to perform those things for free. here is a talent that you have that you've worked on, created, and done really well with. But here's the church asking you to do it for free, where you could be out making money, supporting your family, supporting your life, your lifestyle, and enjoying something that you're doing that you obviously are very talented in, whether you can sing, play an instrument, or whatever it is. Also, the time, rob the community of our time, amount of time that we spend in church worshiping, especially African Americans, especially those of us who are part of the Baptist Church or any other predominantly Black historic Christian community. We spend a lot of time in church. I laugh and I joke about how much I love professional football, but I never got a chance to watch a lot of it because we were in church literally all day on Sundays. But that not just Sundays, but there were some Saturdays, there was some Wednesday nights, there was some other Fridays or Thursdays during the summer when it was revival. I talked about how my mother, not only would we go to our revival, but we would go to a revival of any church that she could find in the city. And so I spent my entire summer, or at least a large part of my summers, afternoons in churches during the summer. I talked about again how my mother would go to these tent revivals. So we would be outside in the humidity, drenched in sweat, kids from 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening till 10 or later, because Black people in the church doing revival don't know how to stop. They go on and on and on because we have so many things that we're struggling, that we're begging, that we're praying, that we're asking this God to fix in our life. And so it goes on and on and on and on and on. But the thing that we can put our hands on, and that is the most tangible of the resources that we wasted, is the money, is our financial resources. Sharon said it was a great read, waiting for the next one. Thank you, Sharon, so much. I still appreciate Sharon for supporting me in the book. Thank you, Sharon. That means a whole lot. And I'm throwing around ideas as to what the next book will be, how I'm going to write it, what's going to be in it. So I will let you know certainly when that is to come. But in the book, again, I talk about the financial resources, and I highlighted a research article researched that in 2009, the article states that the Black church had given $420 billion. That Black people had given $420 billion to the church from 1980 from 2009, a span of 29 years. $420 billion. That is about just over about $14.5 billion a year, or over $1 billion a month. Now think about that. What could our community do? Because here's the thing, a vast majority of that money does not get back into the community. A vast majority of that money is not used for the benefit of the members and the community. Now, I'm not saying it all, because I have people who will come on, leave me comments and say, well, my church does this and my church does that. And absolutely, I have been a part of churches that do a lot with the money. They have outreach programs. As a matter of fact, and I've talked about this before, as a matter of fact, the last time I attended church, my wife and I left the church, came back and joined the local church there in Atlanta, in Decatur. And we left the church from the standpoint of attending church because we just couldn't do it anymore. We couldn't, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't go back. But we continue with the outreach program for a couple of years after that because we thought it was such a great outreach program. So that church, in part, used the money in part to do some really great things for the community. They literally walked the street and fed people who needed to be fed. They provided clothing. They provided haircuts. All this free of charge. They provided education, some computer classes, all of that. So it was an absolutely wonderful outreach program. And so I'm saying that to say, I'm not saying that all of the churches, that none of the churches are doing that. There are some, but largely, if you look at the money that is given to these churches, the return on investment for the community and for the individual members are not there. I have my own personal stories that I won't rehash on this program, but I will maybe at a later date. But I have my own personal stories. So But just think about the amount of money and what could be done in our communities with that amount of money. Notice that those of you who, again, who've been part of the Black church, and I'm not necessarily talking about the mega churches, but those of us who grew up in the neighborhood churches, in your neighborhood, if you grew up in the inner city, how many churches were there on each corner? How many churches were you surrounded, say, in a 5 mile radius? There were plenty of churches. Um, the most the thing that we see that is the most unchanging, the most consistent thing that we do see in our communities is a lot of churches, liquor stores, beauty supply stores, those type things. But what the constants are, those are the constants, and including a lot of churches, and the neighborhood stays the same. The poverty, the plight of the community, the sheer poverty, the crime, all of that. None of those things changes, and here we are with all of these churches. So you have to ask yourself two questions: from a tangible and practical standpoint, where's all the money going? Why can't we get to use the money to make the community better? And secondly, if we're so devout, and African Americans are the most devout demographic, at least in this country, by far, we are the most pious demographic in this country by far. Why isn't it reflected in our community? If we're giving all of this, our financial resources, our time, our effort, our mindset, our ideology, everything that we do, our praises to this God, to this religion, to this Jesus Christ, why isn't it returning the favor by blessing our communities in a sense where the communities are growing and the crime is gone, or at least minimal. The children are growing up safe and healthy and all of that. We don't see that in the vast majority of our communities. We don't see that. And so there is a danger, there is something going on there as well. Some other dangers that I talk about that I want to touch on are the church makes us collectively depend on outside sources, depend on things outside of ourselves. It is all connected. When you begin to depend on this God or this Jesus for your everything, I said this a lot, Christians, especially Black Christians, live from miracle to miracle. And so you begin to depend on things outside of yourself, which leads you to depend on the government more so, the job, people who don't look like you, because you've been so conditioned to put the accountability and responsibility of you creating a better life for yourself on something outside of you. And so we become accustomed to that, and that is dangerous to us as a community. One of the other things that I also talked about is it makes us docile. It makes us too forgiving. I remember, and some of you may be old enough, and some of you may remember the shooting that happened in Carolina. I think it was near Charlotte or whatever, where the gentleman, I think it was Dylan Roof, walked into the church and shot the people. Amazing how forgiving our people were. The same thing with the incident in the church in Buffalo, and many other times. Because we as African Americans, we take the Bible more literal than any other demographic, right? I said this, and I will die on this hill. African Americans, we live through the prism of what is right, or what we believe is right, according to biblical scripture. That's our priority. That's how we see life. That's how we live life, through those prisms, generally speaking, as a collective. Every other demographic, they live life through the prism of self-preservation. And so where they may be faithful, and they may be devout, and they may be religious, what is foremost, what is the most important thing to them as a collective group is preservation of their kind, not us. What is important to us, what is the most important thing to us, is living life the way we believe it should be living according to our interpretation of biblical scripture. And that is dangerous. That makes us docile. that makes us easy to be taken advantage of, and we see that it has happened. Again, if you look at any statistics and categories, African American, for the most part, are at the bottom of every positive or good category, and we're at the top of every bad or negative category. And it is really, and in large part, it's because we don't value or we don't view self-preservation as the most important thing in our collective community. And that's not how what we live by. And so it is extremely dangerous to do that. Also, when you follow the Bible the way we do, the way many Christians do, and this is also to include uh, white fundamentalists and white nationalists and all of that in this particular category, we largely become anti-science, right? I don't care what you say and how you try to reason it. The Bible and science, they don't line up. There is not an alignment between the two. Science has and continue to disprove things in the Bible. The Bible has never disproved science. And so when we believe that the earth was created in 6 days, we believe that things were created out of order. When we believe that a man came from that a woman came from the rib cage of a man, those are anti-science beliefs. And on a world stage, we are viewed as unintelligent and we are laughed at. It is all right if you are a parent, if you're a grandparent, and you are where you want to be in life, and you want to continue to believe those type of things. But please do not stop or forbid your child from understanding and studying and following the science. Another reason why it is dangerous for us, for these cities and these states to be pushing, and even nationally now, to be pushing, to be teaching for our schools, to be teaching Christian education in schools. It is dangerous. It is wrong. It makes absolutely no sense, and there is no place for it. And so that is dangerous. When you are on the world stage, when you travel internationally, there are places in parts of Africa and some other places where people are extremely religious and devout. But generally speaking, people can separate their faith and their religion from science. And if you replace science with your religion and your faith, then you are deemed to be someone who is not intelligent, and someone who's laughed at, and someone believes who are frowned upon. Another issue, another danger of religion is that it robs us of our drive and our ambition. Why is that? How is that? When you believe that everything is predestined, when you believe that everything is in the hand of God or Jesus, or He has a plan, you are easily and willing to accept when something don't go your way the first time, because you chalk it up to, well, I guess it just wasn't for me. So that robs you of your ambition. When I knew this lady. My wife knew this. My wife told me about this lady that she knew, who, and this is a great example, who wanted to write a book, and she had this fantastic idea about writing a book. And who knows, the book might have sold, and she might have been, a best-selling author. But she told my wife asked her, well, why haven't you written the book? And she said, well, I'm waiting for God to tell me it's time to write the book. From a practical standpoint, how does that work? Do you hear a voice in your head that says, okay, you should write this book, or what is it? And how do you know that this is not just your subconscious or some mental illness, but this is really God? Or if it is a voice, is it God, or is it the devil? Because you believe in the devil too. Or what is it? But from the other side, you're robbing yourself from an opportunity to put out some material, to do something that you love doing, to put out some work that could possibly help a lot of people, certainly something that would be completely satisfying to you, because you're waiting to be told what to do from this invisible deity that you believe in. And so that ambition, that drive, is robbed. Again, that's not unique to this person. That happens a lot in our communities. I see people all the time who want to achieve something and they might attempt it and it becomes difficult the first time and they give up and they say, well, if it was for me, God will have it for me. No, maybe you just need to take a different approach. Maybe you need to try again. Maybe you need to get with some people and get a mentor. Maybe you need to do a little bit more research. But to quit and sit back and say, well, it wasn't for me because God didn't make it happen, that robs us collectively of our ambition and our drive. Um, one of the things also, and I think this is one of the more dangerous things, and we sort of touched on this when we talked about Jaden Ivy, is that religion, um, it um, it fosters misogyny, it fosters bigotry, it fosters hatred, it fosters mistreatment of people. And I think that is extremely dangerous. Again, what I've said about religion is that religion is inherently discriminatory. Um, it is inherently dangerous to those who we consider to be others. Others would be people outside of our religious realm, our religious beliefs, and even in the Christianity faith, there are sects within Christianity that don't get along, that don't like each other, but yet they all still call themselves Christians. But when you hate someone because they choose to love someone of the same sex, or you hate someone because they're not part of your particular sect, or you believe, as people did in the past, and as some people still do, that somehow our skin is cursed, and it's the reason why we suffer the way that we do, or when you demonize other spiritual practices, African spiritual practices, because you've been brainwashed to believe that Christianity is the correct way. When you demonize the way other people practice their spirituality, or the way, what we see now with a lot of people, especially Black Christians, when everything is demonic, everything from yoga to meditation, to crystals to horoscopes, to whatever. You view everything as being demonic. I mean, when you view everything as being demonic, you stifle your growth. You stifle the growth of people around you, your kids. You're no longer interested in learning about things. Just because you learn about something, don't mean that you become part of that thing. I know about many religions, and I'm still not part of any of them. I know about many other organizations and whatever, and I'm not part of those things as well, as the way many of you are. Um, but it is harmful. We've seen where the Bible and other Abrahamic books, faith books, and the sacred scriptures of other religions subjugate women, um, are okay with abusing women. The Bible, and don't let anyone tell you any other way, is a book full of misogyny, hatred toward women. It condones and instructs on slavery. I don't care how you frame it, what you call it. People who try to defend it, first of all, they are wrong for trying to defend it, and then they are wrong in the explanation of their defense. Um, Ownership of another human being is wrong and should be wrong, regardless the time, the period, the location, and who's doing it. Um, um, Working off of debt, as some people try to defend, is still not right, but it is absolute. But it is also not just what the Bible is talking about when it talks about slavery. It goes well beyond that. It teaches and instructs on how to enslave non-Hebrews as well as Hebrews, but particularly non-Hebrews for life, and how to pass those individuals down to other members of your family. It instructs on how to trick a man into staying a slave by having him marry a woman and having kids while they're slaves, so that the woman and the child remains a slave regardless of what happens. And so all of that, again, it is misogynistic. It talks about mistreatment of women. Women are basically property in the Bible and Christianity and Judaism and Islam. They're property. They're not valued for their intelligence, and so forth and so on. And so it is dangerous. And then finally, um, for us as African Americans, it is important that we understand, especially the way Christianity has been practiced in this country and is still practiced, and more so in recent years, that our unfeathered, unquestioned devoutness for Christianity in this country makes many of us unwilling and unknowing supporters of white supremacy. Christian nationalism is nothing but white supremacy. Um, when we are taught to assimilate into a particular structure that is Christianity based and defined by Christian nationalists, we become unwilling participants in white supremacy. When we believe that a man should be the head of the house, regardless of what, and not value the intelligence um, of women and the ability for women to earn income as well, and to have just as much say so in the household as men, we are unknowingly falling into the web of white supremacy. When African Americans are hateful and fight um, the LGBTQ community, again, we are unknowingly and unwillingly becoming part of white supremacy. Because white supremacy believe, even if you are a Christian, a black Christian, they believe there is still a hierarchy, right? And that hierarchy and at the top of that hierarchy, after God, is the white male with means. It is the white heterosexual Christian male with means. And everybody else comes under him. Everybody. Uh, and so we need to understand that when we're talking about how we're such devout Christians and how we support it. You can be a Christian. I have many Christian friends who understand the difference, and they go the extra mile to make sure that they fight against white supremacy and Christian nationalism while still maintaining their Christian identity. But they're quick to understand and quick to say that they do understand and understand the differences between the two. And so for those individuals, I say kudos to you. However, there are many of us in the community that don't. There are many of us in the community that voted against our best interests because someone said that if you are a Christian, this is the way that you should vote and this is the way that you believe. Now, again, granted, I've said this many times. I consider myself to be an independent. I have my issues with the left, but I certainly have more issues with the right. And so we will leave that at that. But yeah, and so again, to wrap up, I just wanted to bring that topic and have us discuss those things and talk about those things because I felt that it was personally, it was important to me after the things that I have been through with and seen with this friend of mine over the last month, a couple of months or so. And then with the Jaden Ivy situation, when that came up, that was sort of icing on the cake that we needed to address and talk about all of this as well. And so, yeah, and so I wanted to make sure that we were here and that we address that. And so, yeah, so that's pretty much what I have on that topic. I hope that you all learned something, got something out of that. Spread the word about the podcast. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody you know. Pick up the book from Amazon if you are inclined to. Do that as well. Thank you so much. Support other people in the space. Neo X was on here. She's out there doing a great job. There are other people. There are so many other people now. If you go to TikTok or Instagram or even Facebook, African Americans who are speaking out, who are agnostic, who are atheists, who are spiritual and not religious, who are not Christians, who are not Muslim, who are not Jewish, to talk about these issues the way I do. And so I am excited to see there are so many more people out there Unfortunately, there are not a lot of people my age, or there are a few. But still, the younger people, absolutely. Thank you so much for being out there and being strong and doing it, and continue to work. Continue to do what you're doing. Let's see. Thank you, Sharon. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your support. Maurice Wheatley, thank you again. 1109, thank you. Neo, thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate that. And then, like I said, Sharon again, and then all the rest of you who are out there, thank you so much. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Take care. Be safe.